Welcome to On the Go with AAUW, the American Association of University Women. I'm your host, Jennifer DeSano, the Executive Director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at George Mason University. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Fairfax Station Railroad Museum with Deb Mueller, the station treasurer, and David Perry, he's an intern at the station. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Nice to see you. Fairfax Station Museum, Railroad Museum. Very exciting. Deb as the treasurer and David as the intern. And how did you both come to arrive at the station? What was your story, your journey that took you to volunteer at the station?
For me, it was more of a family gathering and just a natural progression. When my husband and I were looking for a place for our wedding reception and our rehearsal dinner, we had a certain amount of space that we needed, and we wanted it to be close. We were married at Old St. Mary's up in Fairfax Station, and literally within walking distance down the street, they told us that Fairfax Station Railroad Museum was there and that we could use that space. We checked it out, we used it for our rehearsal dinner, and from that point forward, we've used it for birthday parties. Both my mom and my mother-in-law celebrated 80 years. And we've also done other events within family get-togethers, etc. So the natural progression was, okay, it means something to me, let me get involved. And I actually started out just to do small events and crafts for children, and suddenly I was the treasurer within the year. So it was like, okay.
And how many years have you been married?
I have been married for 21 years.
Oh,
so.
well, congratulations. And what a wonderful beginning.
There we go.
And your journey began where?
As a senior at West Springfield High School, I'm able to take a class called Applied History, where I'm able to forego the last period of the day, and instead of going to the last period, I can go to an internship of my choice. And how we choose those internships is we have a whole bunch of internships lined up by our teacher, and they all come and present and give their spiel to us. And when Michael came in representing Fairfax Railroad Museum, he was funny, and he was really passionate about what he was talking about, and I really connected with that. So I chose to go with that internship.
That's wonderful. And now you're learning all about history. You're learning about the mechanics of the devices that couple the trains together, and you're able to do some public speaking as well. It's a wonderful way for a young person to learn about history and also to share that knowledge with others. And what is the history of the Fairfax Station Railroad Museum? It started, the railroad here in Virginia, what was it, 1830s? The railroad started to begin coming into power? Mass transit was railroad.
Mass transit was railroad. And it was actually, before it was Fairfax Station, it was the village of Fairfax Station. And it was started by the Irish railroad workers. So St. Mary's was the actual church that brought them forward. And so they started building the railroad, and of course, as the town grew, more things were brought in, whether it was for the general stores, etc. So of course, it was obviously very important just for day-to-day life, and then as we move through, the Civil War happens, and so it becomes a very, very big part for the Civil War. If most people know the local history, there are a lot of plaques going out there. We're part of the Civil War tour, the walking, so you can actually pass St. Mary's and see that Clara Barton was not only at St. Mary's Church, but also at our little station. And St. Mary's was the field hospital, so that is where surgeries were done, etc. But Clara Barton had asked to do more for the Civil War, so she actually showed up just after the Second Battle of Manassas, or Bull Run, depending upon which side you were on. And as she stepped off that railroad car, she saw 3,000 wounded and dying soldiers on the property
wow.
from the station all the way up to St. Mary's. And thus, of course, that is the beginning of her thought process for the American Red Cross.
Right.
And then we kind of move forward through
From history
from there, to that it still was a vital part for Fairfax Station. And then, of course, as railroad transportation became no more, automobiles, planes, etc., it fell into disrepair, and they actually shuttered it. And we're going to get ready to close it down.
And then that was around, 1960s? When that
1960s,
started to
70s,
close down, and people didn't rely so much on that particular branch of the railway for getting goods and services. There were other competing railways that kind of took over as
Correct.
well. And so, and then it brings us, let's say, to 1970, 1971, when the building of the station house was going to be demolished, correct?
Yes.
What happened then? What happened then?
Fairfax Station is it's most people who live in Fairfax Station know it's a very small community, very historically oriented. So a group of the citizens within Fairfax Station, headed by Lena Wyckoff, decided that they wanted to save the station. Fairfax County said, great, go for it. We'll give you some money towards that process, but you have to move it. It's down by the tracks. You have to move it to where it is now, currently in its location on donated
Fairfax
land.
Station Road.
Off of Fairfax Station Road,
Right.
exactly. So they moved it, and the process of that was to get community involvement. So it was involved through Fairfax County Public Schools, where it was a VOTEC process, where the students actually took it apart and built it on the location, and it was part of their learning process. They learned their general education as well as what they needed for their vocational acumen, as far as whether it's HVAC, building, etc. So it was built by volunteers.
Wow. And the land was donated?
The land was donated.
Yes, and it's a nice parcel of land. It's got lots of wonderful, expansive grounds to it, lots of things going on. We'll get to the exterior of the grounds in just a minute. The students continue to support the project, coming in and doing different things, renovations, and I know that you have some railroad ties that were restored.
Yes,
That was done by an Eagle Scout project?
Those big projects are always done by Eagle Scouts, or some of our interns will take on smaller projects. I don't think David has had the pleasure yet, but we do have opportunities where students can come in and actually restore artifacts.
What other things are going on at the museum? Let's talk about the projects, the events, the special things that you're doing every week you're open on Sundays?
We're open every Sunday from 1 to 4, and there are actually several different types of opportunities to learn and experience history at the museum. So I'll let David get into some of the things that he does as an intern, and what we also have with the other volunteers. So at least twice a month, we will have model train shows where they will bring in their model trains, and they vary from the very, very tiny Z-track to the very large garden, and a lot of people will know those because they're at different places and they're outside.
Are there train enthusiasts that come and bring their trains
Absolutely.
in?
We have the Northern Virginia T-Track Association, some come from Maryland, so all the different groups do participate, and they come as volunteers as well, so they just show up to hopefully bring that to the next generation, because it is a sort of a dying
Well, don't tell that to Thomas the Tank Engine fans.
I will not tell that to Thomas the Tank, but not as many people are involved in model trains, but we can see it growing. There's some younger people involved.
It's really an art form. I mean, you look at those displays, and they're these landscapes that have, miniature trees and whole towns built into these little landscapes, and then you have the fun of pushing a button and watching the train go around, and
some of them actually will blow some smoke, and they'll have the sounds of the steam engine and the whistles. And of course, we have from various ages, from literally the small children to our high schoolers can be involved and as well as learn. So we'll have scavenger hunts on some Sundays. We have reading circles where we actually will read a book related to railroads or something that happened during the railroads to give them that sense of history, because we fantasize it. It's hard work working on the railroad, and David
Oh,
can
yeah.
work and can
Yeah.
talk about that. But and because it is no more, we don't see those steam engines, and the only time you get to experience that is to go to a museum that has a running engine. And as you know, Thomas the Tank, A Day with Thomas, you know, and there's other places, and so we try to do that. We have Living History Days, so we'll have that in June coming up, where we will do some reenactment of the Civil War and when Clara Barton did show up. And so we'll have some wounded soldiers. People can come and participate and be a wounded soldier, be a nurse. And we also have, of course, just our annual train show in December. Just so many different activities. It's, you know, the list is long. So it's always on our website, and you can always double check
And
what's
that's
going on for each of you.
fairfax.station.org.
It's actually Fairfax
Dash.
station.org. I know it's a little
Dash.
crazy,
Okay.
but it's Fairfax.
We'll have it. We'll have it at the end of the program.
There
we'll
we
have
go.
that. So, David, let's get into the nuts and bolts of the trains, okay? And that's your area, the coupling. That's what attracted you to wanting to do this internship.
Right.
Talk to us about that kind of equipment, what it did. How hard was it to be someone working on the railroad, and how hard was it, you know, to manage the physicality of being a person who put those couplings together to get those trains going?
Well, I have to say it was fairly difficult based on the records that we have today. A brakeman, as they were called, even though they messed with all sorts of things on the train, but the brakemen, when they would couple trains, they would a lot of their fingers would be in the way as the trains were coming together. So when they were coupling trains, if they didn't get their hands out in between the trains fast enough, you would end up losing some fingers. In fact, they said, and this is what I tell a lot of our guests when I bring them over to my table, they say you could tell how long a brakeman was serving on the railroad by how many fingers he had left, which is kind of tragic. And that's what leads into my next topic. Janie heard the cries and the cries of pain of these brakemen, because even though he didn't work on the railroad, he worked very close as a dry goods salesman, and it's said that he heard the cries of pain of these guys, and that's why he tried to come up with a better solution, which was
And
Jenny,
he was the inventor of the coupler?
yes, the modern
okay.
knuckle coupler that we have today.
Okay. And what does something like that look like? If you can kind of describe it for us, is a big, heavy metal piece of equipment that latches together
Right,
with a
just
pin?
all you do. Are you talking about the Lincoln pin?
I'm not sure. You're going to have to tell me.
What Janie came up with was the knuckle coupler. Well, just imagine two very heavy metal U shapes, right? And they come together, and as they come together, they automatically clamp all by themselves, right?
Okay.
But Lincoln Pin, the system that it replaced, is you have a link. Just imagine a single chain link and two sort of I call them coin slots. Cover it, and then you use pins to lock it all in place. And I know it's hard to describe.
And you did a great job. I
the
know
model
exactly
there,
what you're talking about.
But yeah, it's we have a wooden model that I let the kids, the children that come to our museum play with, and it's a really good tool for showing them exactly how hard it was for these brakemen to do their job.
Wow. And they'd have to be big burly fellows who could lift a pin, right?
I imagine, yeah. The links themselves weigh 35, 40 pounds, and the pins weigh probably 10, 12 pounds. So yeah, you have to be pretty
strong,
pretty strong guy.
Yeah. My goodness, you have a lot going on, and you're going to give these. Do you give your display, your talk every Sunday, or on a regular schedule that you work with the kids?
I'm there almost every Sunday if we don't have something really big going on where I need to be doing something else. But on a regular Sunday, I'll be out there with my table, just as people walk up, answering questions, just letting them know what it was like for these guys.
Have you had any interesting questions from the kids? Anything that pops to mind? Anecdotal stories?
There have been, most of the kids have been pretty, they've honestly, most of them have been very excited just to see exactly what it was like. As far as questions go, I can't remember any off the top of my head, but yeah, they've all been very excited.
Now, not only trains are kind of historical artifacts at the museum, but you also have telegraph machines and the communication, kind of a history of communication across the railroad track. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. What we do have, we have another intern, and she has chosen to do telegraphy. And what most people don't know is that Andrew Carnegie was a telegrapher. And during the time of mail, we all know Pony Express and all of that, the railroad would deliver the mail. And then, of course, the telegraph came into being, and the only time you could send a message is you would have to come to the railroad to send out your message. And then take it a step further, when you go, and we all have phones in our back pockets, phones in our homes. If you wanted to make a phone call, you had to go to the railroad station and talk to the station master to use the phone. So we do have experiences with the telegraph, and our other intern, Carly, will be there. Carolee, I apologize, and she will show them how to use the telegraph, and she'll tap out some messages and have them guess by looking at the card. And we do simple things like LOL, OMG. And what people don't realize is that that is an extension of some of the abbreviations from the telegraph.
That's amazing. And you had mentioned earlier that we do fantasize about the railroad, and okay, we're going to kind of get on the railroad car and go take a nice long journey, and there's this wonderful experience that you're going to have, and that may be true, it may have been true, but the people who had to lay the track, the people who had to lay the wire for the telegraph, those were arduous. They had to lay wire and track through swamp. There wasn't any air conditioning. And some slaves were used as well to help to get this all put together. How is the history being represented at the museum to talk about that piece?
We try not to romanticize it, because for those of us, as you stated, traveling, great. We're in a nice car. It's air conditioned, and there's food, and that is, and David can talk further about that, because that's the caboose. The caboose was for the workers. But the way the station is set up, when you actually walk in through what we call our entrance, you're actually walking in through the baggage room. And the baggage room is just a very large room, and by its very name, that's where the bags were stored. And then as you walk through, you come down the stairs, and that actually will take you into the station master's area. So there will be a desk where he would have sold tickets. There will also be an area where, if somebody was coming in to send out a telegraph, you'll see that whole setup there. What is interesting, what people don't catch right away, is that we have 2 windows in that station master area. And the reason being is that at one point, we all know that Virginia was segregated. So you will have one window that would have been at the smaller waiting area for people of color. And then on the other side, there would have been a larger area, and it also has the little potbelly stove, which is where the white people would have been waiting for the train. And you'll actually also see 2 doors that are, of course, nailed shut at this point for us, but that is where they would have come in to purchase their ticket and wait and drop off their baggage.
It's interesting. Virginia has an interesting history in that regard. Being from the North originally, it's something we don't always delve into. But for those who grew up in Virginia, and even up until the 70s, really, there was still a difficulty in enforcing integration in many schools in Virginia, and so that history is represented, and it's important to recognize that and to teach about these things.
And we do try to bring that up, and it's amazing to watch the children when you tell them why there's 2 windows and 2 doors. They just look at you like, really, why?
Right. That's a wonderful thing.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Let's talk about the caboose. So you're saying that's
David's area.
David, that's where the workers would eat, and they would live?
Right. Yeah. There's a kitchen area in there, and there's they don't really have beds, but there are some really nice chairs in there, and I can for one say that the raised seats up in what's called the cupola, you can see in the top of the caboose the windows.
Yeah, we've got this here.
Yep. There are actually chairs right there. And
in this section at the top.
Right, in the top section.
Okay.
And it's very nice. You can see basically the entire grounds from up there. And whenever I have a spare minute, or if it's a very slow day, it's always really nice to go up there and just chill for a second, and then go back feeling refreshed. It's really nice.
So, oh my goodness. And well, I bet the engineers weren't really doing that though.
That was more of a lookout position for them.
Were they watching for obstacles along the track? Where does the caboose fall? It's the back of the train.
Right.
Okay, so they wouldn't, so the engineers, and so this is, I mean, I don't know much clearly about train. I assume that the engine's always in the front of the train, or is it ever pushing the train?
It depends.
Okay.
You could have an engine that's pushing the train. You could have one that's pulling. Most often, it's pulling. So yeah.
So the caboose would be in the
The caboose would be in the back. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So what are your favorite model trains? What size? You said they're different scales.
Yeah, well,
Thomas
honestly,
the Tank Engine
is
number one,
Thomas
and everyone.
The Tank, but he's wood.
I had
so that's where everybody starts.
I had just like a Thomas the Tank Engine train table growing up, so I'd have to say that was my favorite tank train model. So just because I had it growing up.
And everybody knows that because he's magnet and he can just he's by hand power. But the different sizes are usually by, and I'm not 100% accurate, but I do know at least a couple, just because we have members who are part of it. So when you see on our website, we'll tell you what scale is going to be there.
Okay.
T-track would be T for table, so they're tabletop. Then there is N, and there's H, there's HO. Z-track is teeny, and when I say teeny, I mean to the point where you need a magnifying glass to work with those. They're very, very small. Yeah. And then, of course, my favorite is the G scale, which is the garden, and those are the large ones that you will see. And a lot of times, if you go to some other places, other museums, they'll actually have them set up at different places, usually Christmas. But they're beautiful. And when if you come to our Christmas show, our annual holiday train show, we do have them outside. The garden size, and we always pray for snow because we do have a couple of trains and what you would call track cleaners that will run and clear off the snow so that they can run, and they're all around the grounds. They go underneath. So it's very, very cool. That's
wonderful. And so you mentioned that there's a baggage room and events happen in there, but there's also some outdoor spaces as well where you can have fun things going on, like if you wanted to have your wedding reception there.
Well, we're on 5 acres, but the actual acreage that we sit on is probably a little bit over an acre. And of course, it houses the station itself. We have the caboose. We also have a speedster, and then there are 2 new sheds that we've had for outdoor, and that's actually where David hangs out a lot because that's where we set him up with his coupler. And you know what? It's been a while since I've looked outside what's in those 2 sheds, so you'll have to let me know what's in there.
Do you know what's in the sheds?
Well, in one we have it's just a dedicated tool shed, well, that sounds but it's all displayed and stuff. Obviously, we have several tools on display, like a track drill. If for switches and stuff, you can't just get you don't just make switches by magic. You have to make sure all the nuts and bolts are in there and everything's put together. You have a car mover where you have it's just a tool for one man to be able to move.
Push a cart
all by himself. And in the other shed we have our baggage cart, where that was just used to lug around all the baggage from customers and stuff. So. And
isn't there like a signal that's on the property too?
There is a signal.
And was that donated, or how did you acquire that?
It was more than likely donated, and I probably couldn't even tell you who it was because it's amazing how many people will come in and bring something. And Michael, our vice president, he's in charge of our different exhibits and displays, and he gets excited when people bring things in. And it's amazing what people are. We have old bells from station masters that would ring the bell for folks to board. We have the signal flags that are inside because before we had all of
even the telegraph. You had paper.
We had flags that they would wave and say, tell them where they're going or what they needed to do to switch. So it's amazing how much we don't realize goes into having that happen. Like I said, we romanticize it. It's so wonderful to be on a steam engine. It is in the school, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. And now you're all volunteers working towards making sure that people have exposure to these artifacts and enjoying all of the stuff that they learn about the trains. And you can be a docent, you can do help in the grounds, you can help with the trains. What other things can you help with if you wanted to volunteer?
Well, as I said,
treasurer.
a treasurer,
An intern.
an intern. No, well, we are all volunteer run, so we are completely nonprofit, and so the only way we get things done is obviously through volunteers. And so, thank goodness for students like David who come in and learn about that and pass on that knowledge. But he also learns how to deal with some of the artifacts. We love our Eagle Scouts. Our Eagle Scouts are the ones who do all of the major projects, and we have a long laundry list of things that need to be done. Something always needs to be repaired because everything's wood. As we know, our train tracks, even though there's metal on there, underneath the ties are wood. So we just had those replaced. We have grounds work that needs to be done. We have a little trail out in the back through our woods, so that needs to be fixed up. So there's always something to do, but if you love history and you like to pass that information on, it's wonderful to have people who want to learn about what happened in Fairfax Station and keep that alive. I don't think people realize how much history is really in Northern Virginia.
Oh, and there is a lot of history, and it's wonderful to bring in the young people and getting them exposed to all of the things that have happened and things that they can then hopefully go in and open a book about and learn about the Civil War, learn about transportation, learn about communication, all those things that you're representing at the museum. It's fantastic, and I think you're doing great work. I'm so happy that you came by today and chatted with me.
We appreciate you having us. You'll have to come visit.
Yes.
It's a very
Well,
fun-
it's just around the corner from where I live, so it's not too far for me to travel.
We're within walking distance to many people.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a community. Fairfax Station, as you said, is kind of a small town even though we're in a big town. And a lot of people are dedicated to preserving our community and making history alive for everyone. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
us.
And thank you for watching On the Go with AAUW.